clueless teen from a rich family realizes he's entangled in a despicable plan that could cost him his life. One evening in a remote area, Juan runs out of a house and hides behind a tree. A few days ago, the high school student stays up late finishing an art project. Months later, he checks his phone and sees that Luciana still hasn't responded to his text messages, where he keeps repeating how much he misses her. So he puts his headphones back on and continues working. The next day during breakfast, his father mentions that Juan's music teacher told him that the teens missed cello practice for a month. He admits that it's true, so the man reminds him that as long as he lives in the house, he'll do what the father says. Suddenly, his mother appears and states it's best if the son takes what her husband says seriously. In the car, he realizes that the art project is falling apart. At school, Juan places the piece on the floor and then tries to fix it with tape. Seconds later, a teacher reprimands the late student and takes him to the office. The man tells Juan that several teachers have told him that the teen always looks like he doesn't get enough sleep and it's affecting his grades. So he suggests that Juan pull himself together before he ends up failing his classes. Before the teen leaves, the teacher tells him to sign a diploma stating that Professor Luciana is leaving, revealing that the person he was texting was a teacher. Surprised, Juan says he thought the woman wasn't leaving until the end of the school year, but the teacher explains that today's her last day. Later, the teen spots Luciana in the hallway, so he quickly talks to the female student next to him and pretends he didn't see the woman. In art class, the professor informs her pupils that even though it's her last day, they'll still need to submit their assignments, eliciting groans from the students. When she approaches Juan's table, she scoffs and asks what happened to the project. Insulted, the teen rises to his feet and leaves the room without saying a word. After class, Luciana finds the student sulking in the library and admonishes him for what he did. She explains that he didn't have to make a scene because now people are gonna ask her what happened. Juan says he can't believe that she is leaving without telling him, so the woman writes an address down on his hand and tells him to meet her there at 8 p.m. tonight. They share a kiss, and when the teen gets handsy, she says they can't do anything risky while inside the school. Later, his friend asks him what he's doing over the long weekend and suggests he join them on a trip if he doesn't have any plans. Juan doesn't give a definitive answer but promises to call if he changes his mind. That evening, he commutes to the address Luciana gave him and enters a building. Eventually, the teen enters an empty apartment where he answers a phone. Later in the parking garage, the student gets in the passenger seat of Luciana's car. Juan asks if she finished packing all her stuff, and she says the few items in the back seat are the only ones left that haven't been moved. He wonders if she regrets anything, and she nods. When the woman sees the hurt look on his face, she clarifies that she never regretted them starting a relationship. However, she acknowledges that even though being with him has been lovely, it was inappropriate. The student begs the teacher not to leave him and leans in for a kiss, but Luciana points out that they don't have a future together. She adds that the teen needs to find someone his age because she is bad for him. However, he insists that she's the only person he cares about. The professor admits that she's unwell because she cried all night picturing the two of them running away to her mother's house in Cordoba and never coming back. The smitten student thinks it's a great idea and says that they should do it, but the woman says she should probably drive him home. During the ride, Juan wants Luciana to reconsider, but she doesn't want to talk about it, so the teen stops the vehicle by pulling on the handbrake. He says they should go on the trip because it's a long weekend anyway, and assures her no one will notice that they went together. Finally, the teacher succumbs to the student's wishes and they share a kiss. Later, they stop at a gas station and the woman tells Juan to stay in the car. While he remains in the passenger seat, Luciana speaks to someone on her phone outside. After the call, the professor offers the teen a beer and he accepts. Suddenly, an upbeat song plays on the radio, so she dances in front of the car. Later, the woman sees how sleepy the student is, so she tells him to get some rest and that she'll wake him up when they reach their destination. After he closes his eyes, the teacher takes a picture of the sleeping teen. Hours later, Juan finally wakes up and realizes he slept through the night. Finally, they arrive at the remote farmhouse and she says it was her grandparents. She tells the student that she brought some clothes with her and hopes some of them fit him. Then, the teacher points to the pool and tells him to go ahead and check it out. Juan sees that the water is covered in leaves. Seconds later, Luciana playfully pushes him into the pool and runs away. In his hurry, he forgets his backpack in the water. Inside the house, the student sees that all the furniture is covered in white sheets, implying that no one's lived there for years. In the bathroom, the woman helps the teen remove his wet clothes and guiltily realizes that she ruined his phone. Before he gets in the shower, the couple shares a kiss. Later, Luciana says she needs to lie down for a bit, which the student understands, seeing as she drove all night. Then, he lies down next to her and puts his arm around her body. That afternoon, Juan removes the white sheets covering the furniture. When he explores the property, the teen finds several animals grazing near the house. Later, he makes a fire and tells the woman that he's glad they decided to take a trip together. Then, the student suggests they drive to the village so they can buy some food for tonight. However, the teacher doesn't think it's a good idea for people to see them together, concerned about the judgmental looks they'll get because of their age difference. Juan says he'll go by himself, so Luciana tosses him the car keys. Despite her hesitation earlier, the woman decides to accompany the student. While driving away from the house, the teacher touches the teen, so he stops the vehicle. They share a kiss, but Luciana pulls away and starts walking into the trees. Juan chases after her and they make love on the ground. However, he finishes early, so he apologizes to the woman. That evening, they do the deed in the bathtub. After the intimate moment, the teen says he fell in love with the woman since the first time he saw her. Then, the teacher shares that the first time she noticed the student was when she saw him playing the cello. Later, they move to the bedroom and make love through the night. The next day, Juan finds the teacher sitting on a bench outside the house, and she says she was just talking to her husband on the phone, revealing that she's a married woman. Moments later, two French men on bicycles arrive at the property and the teen greets them. Meanwhile, Luciana sees the strangers from inside the house, grabs a pistol, and hides it underneath her clothes. She joins them outside and takes the student aside to tell him that he shouldn't have entertained the men. Juan explains that they're interested in buying a house, so he thought it might be a good idea for them to talk to the woman because she's mentioned wanting to sell the property earlier. However, Luciana reminds him that he's a teen who's staying at a remote house with an older woman he isn't related to, which might make the men suspicious. So he apologizes for not thinking it through and the men leave soon after. Inside the house, the woman says she's packing her bags, so Juan stops her and professes his love. He promises that they'll stay in the house and he won't go to the village anymore. He adds that he doesn't want to cut the trip short because he's never felt this happy before. Eventually, Luciana tells the student that she loves him too and they do the deed. Later, the woman gets up from bed and squeezes oranges in the kitchen. Then, she places the glass of juice on the bedside table. The next day, Juan finds the teacher's note and reads that she went to the village. When he reaches for the drink, he knocks it off the table and the glass shatters on the floor. In the dining area, he sets the table for their next meal. Then, when he tries to open the front door, he realizes that it's locked from the outside. The teen checks the windows and sees that they're secured with a padlock. Eventually, Juan finds a window with a broken bar and he squeezes through. Outside, he picks flowers and visits the horses in the stables. Later, he returns to the house and places the freshly picked flowers in a vase as decoration for the dining table. Suddenly, Luciana helps Gustavo into the house, and when she sees the teen, she seems surprised that he's there. The pair help the man to the couch and the teacher tells Juan to grab the first aid kit so she can treat the injury on Gustavo's leg. The student asks if there's anything he can do to help, but the woman tells him to go to the room and wait for her. Later, Luciana tells the teen that Gustavo is her brother. He asks about the injury, but she gives a vague answer and says the man's always involved in shady dealings. The teacher says she'll need to nurse him back to health, so he'll be staying at the house for a few days. She adds that she'd like the student to stay there with them because she doesn't want to be alone with her brother. That evening, Juan asks if they need to transfer Gustavo to a bigger bed, but the woman says he's alright where he is and she'll stay in the closest room in case the man needs anything. Seconds later, the brother says he wants them all to eat together so they can get to know each other. At the dining table, the student tries to make small talk by saying that he understands the pain the man feels because he injured his ankle playing rugby before. During dinner, Gustavo keeps bringing up Juan's age and asks his sister if her husband knows about the affair. Insulted, the teen gets up and storms out of the room. Later, the man brings the student his dinner and apologizes for stepping out of line earlier. The next day, Juan tells Luciana that he knows his presence annoys her brother and that he should probably leave. Gustavo, who overheard the conversation, asks why he'd want to leave if he has everything he needs, such as a warm bed, meals, and a woman to sleep with. Annoyed, the teen says he's leaving on the first bus, but when he tries to pass, the man blocks his way. Eventually, Gustavo steps aside and allows the student to pass. While Juan gathers his belongings, he sees the man standing by the doorway. When the student asks him to move out of the way, Gustavo slams his head on the wall, knocking him unconscious. Then, the man closes the door and secures it with a padlock from outside. Later, Gustavo nails wooden boards on the window of Juan's room to make sure he doesn't escape. Soon, the teen wakes up and realizes he's being imprisoned. Because he won't stop trashing the room, the man enters and punches the student. Then, he orders Luciana to help him tie Juan to the bed, revealing that they're working together. That evening, the teen wonders if Gustavo knows that his father is a judge, and the captor implies that he's aware. Juan thinks this is happening to him because he's sleeping with the teacher, so the man pulls his pants down and touches him inappropriately. Then, Gustavo takes out his phone and records a video of the crying teen. Meanwhile, the student's mother receives the disturbing video and she goes downstairs to show the police. On the table are several photographs of the teen sleeping with newspapers in front of him, revealing that the authorities have been searching for a while and that they've been receiving the pictures for a few days. Soon, the teacher enters the room and acknowledges Juan's right to be angry but begs that he follow everything Gustavo says. Later, the student realizes the door is open, so he follows the noises coming from the living room. To his surprise, he sees Luciana making love to the man, revealing that they lied about being siblings. Instead of informing Gustavo of Juan's presence, she gestures for the teen to keep quiet, so he returns to the room. Heartbroken and betrayed, the student cries, unable to process the situation. Hours later, he sneaks out of the room when he hears the man snoring. Suddenly, he sees Luciana walking around the kitchen, so he tries not to make any noise. As he squeezes through the window with a broken bar, the woman sees him escaping. Juan runs away from the house, so the teacher chases after him. Eventually, he confronts Luciana for lying to him. He asks her to tell him the truth about Gustavo, so she says she can't get rid of him because she's afraid he might kill her. The student tells her that they should escape together, but the man suddenly appears. When the teen turns around, the woman hits him on the head with a rock, knocking him out. As they're dragging him back to the house, their associate arrives with the ransom money, much to Gustavo's delight. Later, while Juan's tied to a chair in the stable, the man reveals that the teacher's name isn't Luciana. Just as he's about to shoot the student, the woman appears and pushes his arm. Gustavo points the pistol at the teacher and says they need to kill Juan because he saw his face. After she storms off, the man hands the weapon to his associate to finish the job. The armed man tells the teen to grab the tarp on the ground so he doesn't have to clean up after he shoots him. However, Juan pushes the man and impales his head on a sharp metal rod on the post. Luciana tries to run back to the stable, but Gustavo stops her. Then, the student takes the weapon and he confronts the pair. The man uses the teacher as a shield and attacks the teen. He punches Juan several times, but the student manages to fight him off. Then, they fall into the pool where they continue the scuffle. Suddenly, the student stabs Gustavo's neck using a pair of scissors from his backpack that he left in the water days ago, ending his life. Later, Juan and Luciana drive away from the house, and he sees the horses galloping alongside the vehicle. That evening, the teen finally returns home. Hours later, he opened the bag of money and allowed the bills to fly out of the car windows. The woman told him that they should flee the country, so the student stopped the vehicle and said that if she really wanted them to be together, she'd stay in the car and leave the bag of money by the side of the road. However, Luciana chose the money, so Juan drove away. In the present, the traumatized teen cries in the shower, his entire body covered in bruises. Later, he plays his cello, which his parents and the cops can hear from downstairs. Meanwhile, the woman rides a bus while holding the bag of money close to her chest.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.